Okay, so Gidon, welcome.
Great to be here. Great to be chatting with you.
Thank
I
you.
can speak
So
about I can speak about Monday, every day, all day, right? That's what we do.
amazing. I love to hear that. So, yeah, this series is focused on partnership conversations. I'm Danny from Monday CRM, and let's start with the basics. What's your name? What do you do?
Sure. My name's Gidon Sobel. I'm the founder and president of Purple Plum Consulting. We are exclusively focused on Monday.com, both on the license sales side of things, as well as the whole spectrum of professional services, including initial build outs of workflows, as well as onboarding customers and just supporting them in their Monday journey and helping them ultimately become self-sufficient in Monday, which is always the goal. And we like to say that we were bitten by the Monday bug very early on, and we still kind of, definitely on this train and going on the ride here. Very much part of the journey with Monday.
Amazing. So, kind of a simple question. Why Purple Plum?
Everyone asks me that question. You want something memorable, so the purple is a powerful color. It's easy to remember. Purple plum, there's some alliteration there. It's a little bit evocative, a little bit juicy, so to speak. We've got our little purple plum memorabilia over here, swag. Um, so yeah, I think it's a catchy name, and fortunately, it's pretty memorable for customers. Yeah.
All right, that does the trick for a logo and a name for sure. So what industry are you focused on with your implementation and your, I guess, overall clientele?
It's a great question. Our biggest focus is real estate. It wasn't something I planned on focusing on initially. We're more of a generalist company, but very quickly we saw that a lot of our early customers just came from the real estate space, whether they were individual realtors or brokerages or lenders or anything kind of adjacent to that. And they were struggling for kind of a flexible, inexpensive platform, and Monday seemed to kind of fit that need. And very quickly, we were just doing a lot of those types of implementations. So we've really doubled down on that in the last few years. We have a real estate solution. We cover commercial real estate, residential real estate, property management. So that's really a big focus of ours. But we also focus on retail, and I have a lot of I worked at Home Depot, so a lot of that background was relevant. I've done a lot of work with restaurants, what we call quick service restaurants, QSR, so multi-locations, thousands of stores across the country, thousands of restaurants, and kind of more of a franchising type of model. So that's another one of our specialty areas. And there's actually a lot of overlap because there's real estate in retail and restaurants. You got to find the property, you got to build the restaurant, manage the facility. So it's actually a nice mix of everything.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's eventually, if it's big enough, it turns into real estate anyway.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. It's funny how it goes. You kind of get the client and then it kind of steamroll, like just keeps
That's
going.
right.
And
That's
suddenly
right.
you're an expert in real estate because that's just how it happens.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, initially we had to kind of learn a lot, and now we have actually two realtors on our team, so that brings more credibility to what we're doing. And we have more understanding of the nuances of the industry, and that kind of, again, informs what we do and how we evolve our solution. So it's definitely been an interesting learning process for us.
Got it. So my next question, you already answered it, but it was why customers choose you specifically. But you already answered it because you already did it for so many times and you have the right expertise in-house. But why do you think they choose Monday specifically?
I think I'm going to actually answer both questions, and I'll start with the Monday piece. I think what Monday has has done and managed to continue to do is keep that user experience impactful and kind of low friction for the user. I think that's really the sweet spot. It gets harder as the features that are available become more abundant because there's a temptation to get very technical and very intricate. But Monday's kind of keeps pushing that usability and the user experience and kind of redesigning a pop-up for this and then redesigning it again, where you might argue it wasn't necessary, but they're kind of not falling into the trap of, okay, we'll just leave it the way it was. So I think the fact that Monday is still really focused on user experience, I think is really powerful and why customers are drawn to it. I like to say it's almost making work fun, right? Because there's a little bit of gamification, there's a little bit of movement, the confetti every now and then. So those little things I think are not so little in the big picture, almost subconsciously to customers. So I think that's why customers are drawn to Monday for that reason. I think increasingly customers are seeing that Monday is more than like a one-trick pony, and that's really it's a big toolbox, a big set of building blocks, whatever analogy you want to use, a Lego box, and really can be assembled in different ways. So I think that's continuing to be a very valuable kind of message to the marketplace. Just coming back to Purple Plum, I think why customers are coming to us, and hopefully that remains the case, is while we have that Monday knowledge, obviously, which is given, and we have maybe that industry lens, I think we're also trying to promote more of a consultative approach to implementing Monday and not just focusing on the technical piece, which is obviously important. But I always like to say, at least 50% of implementing Monday is not Monday. It's the people, it's the change management, it's the approach. Um, and so we try and really hold customers' hands through that. And I think that's actually in a way more necessary with Monday customers because a lot of them are coming from the business side and not from IT, and they're not used to projects. They're not used to implementations. So they don't always know what to expect. And so they almost need a little bit more hand holding. And so that's kind of one of the areas we try and focus on.
Nice. I like that. So obviously you've done a lot, many customers and projects. Is there a moment or maybe a few moments that you remember like, oh wow, that was cool with the implementation or maybe a success story or something like that that kind of pops into your mind?
Yeah, those are the Monday moments, right? So
Yeah.
they're all sorts of they're always those. That's what keeps us going. Um, you know, one of the ones for me was we're working with a particular company in the home improvement or really HVAC, which is air conditioning and heating and plumbing, and so they're aggregating businesses and they're buying regional companies and bringing them under their umbrella. And so I remember once we had been started working with them on the work management side of Monday, and they fell in love with it. They saw the value. They moved from spreadsheets into an actual platform for evaluating and integrating these new acquisitions. And their chief collaboration officer called me, and he said, we really love Monday. Does Monday have a CRM? And at that point, Monday had a relatively new CRM, and um, I said, well, as it happens, Monday launched recently a new CRM, and I think it would really help your business. And so they landed up replacing their previous platform, which is a more well-known platform at the time, with Monday CRM, and they haven't looked back. And it really highlighted to me, coming back to our earlier point, that they kind of felt that familiarity and comfort with Monday, and so they were hoping there was more Monday in a new place like CRM, and so that to me was like, okay, Monday, you got it right, you know.
Amazing.
So
Yeah, that's really cool. What is your, obviously you use it, you see it all the time. What is your kind of favorite part, feature, capability
it's
that you
a
pick
great,
out?
yeah. It's I should have a whole list of these. Um, you know. I think just sometimes the basics are important. So I love the way that within Monday you can really have multiple lenses through which you can see information. So you can have a tabular view, you can have a card view, you have a Kanban view, a map view, and the list goes on all the time, a Gantt chart. And I think because what it really helps reinforce is that you can take the same boring data and bring it to life in different ways for different use cases. And I think for new customers, I think that often like is an aha moment when they realize not only is this a very cool grid view in a more of a traditional sense, but with a click of a button, you can transform it into something else. And that really like kind of takes them from being 2D into 3D, right? In a sense. So I think that that concept is powerful. And in almost every demo we do, we add 4 or 5 different views just so we give that multiple lens kind of experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to work with, like, I personally love the calendar view in general.
Right.
And it just makes sense in my head to see
That's
the,
right.
but other people just,
Right.
have a
And
list.
as we know, people learn differently, people experience differently, and that's why it's important to cater to those differences.
Yeah. So just going back to kind of your go-to customers and everything, what would you say is the most popular use case you get approached? Like at what point or for what reason uh, people see,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there are probably a couple of those, given that we focus on real estate. So in that respect, you're seeing more of it, what we call acquisition or lead management. So you're taking a real estate prospect, a potential buyer or seller, and that you're managing them through a pipeline, whether they're about to list a property or they're looking to purchase or rent a property. So that's a common use case that, in traditional terms would be called CRM, but it really is like more of a lead management because there's so much to CRM. So I think that's one kind of key use case. Another one, we call it just checklists. Again, in the real estate space, there's so many situations where there are checklists. What do you have to do before a house can be put on the market? You need to put up the lawn sign, you need to paint it, you need to mow the lawn, you need to get this paperwork. So there's checklists and dates and responsible parties for everyone. And I think it's, one of those gets messed up or missed, then the whole domino effect kind of falls out of whack. So we've actually done some work to expand on that within Monday, but checklist is a common use case. I think the other piece that is more on the work management, the project management side is the ability to manage a portfolio of projects and resource management. So you'd be amazed in literally Fortune 100 companies how many companies are still using spreadsheets and scrappy tools to manage these types of processes. So, just this week we're doing a demo to a company that has 1,000 retail locations, and all of their projects are managed in spreadsheets. And
That's
it's
wild.
a game changer for them to centralize you're talking tens of millions of dollars of capex, and how that process and funding allocation is managed, and so to bring them into the 21st century is truly a game changer for them, and we've already gotten good feedback so far in the process. So those are two. There are many use cases. I always like to say, there's a famous Dr. Seuss kind of expression, all the places you can go with blah, 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 right? So we like to say all the places you can go with Monday.com, there's just so many things you can do. So yeah.
Nice. Um, so you see obviously a lot of use cases. What would you say people should stop doing using their CRM? Is there like the opposite of a go-to, I guess, the not go-to?
Um, Interesting. Sometimes, I feel like when people are using a CRM, they're still like one leg in and like one leg out in email and kind of their traditional tools. So I think sometimes, as long as the CRM can support this, which I think is the case now with Monday, one should try and go all in with Monday as much as possible, because then you're still, if not, then you're really doing work in two systems. You're doing email and you're doing your Monday updates. And so I think that the challenge is to, in terms of what not to do, is hold on to the past, as a safety net, right? And
Yeah,
then
lean in.
it's like a yoke around your neck. If you can let go, you can actually allow yourself to work in a different way, and as a result become more efficient, as you move along. So it's a little bit
Yeah,
of trust, I guess.
I'm guessing it's even harder for more traditional industries.
That's right. That's right. And I'm wired the same way. I like to be able to go back to my email and just double check did it go out the send box. But increasingly technology is more reliable. Nothing's perfect. We still need humans in the world, right? Even with
For
AI.
now.
But I think allowing the processes of old to mold to the software is important.
Nice. So you've been using it for obviously years, I'm guessing at this point. Do you have like a hack, something that you like to do, something that you figured out at some point, and this is like your Monday trick?
We did one thing which was a couple of years ago, actually. We did this. Someone on my team came up with this. We called them anonymous checklists. So without getting too technical, you can kind of create an experience where, let's say you're listing a home, you want to list the 17 steps you've got to go through, like I mentioned, putting up the yard sign, mowing the lawn, and you don't want to necessarily create a whole list of sub items. You can just create another item on another board for that property where all of the columns are those steps one at a time, and then you just connect that item back into your main item for the property, and then it shows as a vertical list of to-dos, right? Like just fields where you can flip them on and off, on and off, on and off. We call that an anonymous checklist, and we've actually used it a lot in different situations. So it kind of really uses Monday in a standard way, but just not what people typically do. So it's one of the things. And I think there's more and more of that because really, ultimately, Monday is just a set of building blocks. And in a sense, they're kind of agnostic to one another. So they really can be assembled in increasingly creative ways.
Yeah, that's interesting. I keep hearing like new ways and new solutions and new approaches to this. And every time you're obviously build a platform, like you said, with building blocks, you never know the creativity that
That's
people
right.
can.
That's right. That's right. And I'm always intrigued when I have two consultants working on the same project. They come at it from totally different angles, and then likely what we do is somewhere in the middle, right? Because
Yeah.
you're taking a little bit from everyone.
So speaking of creativity, maybe that's the one you already answered, but is there another like crazy setup that you were like, whoa, like you were talking about spreadsheets that were, but I'm guessing it would be difficult to transition, but maybe you saw someone set something up with Monday, or you helped someone set up, and it was just like totally different than what you're used to seeing.
Um, not so much. I think sometimes the challenge is to almost avoid that, right? Because if it's a big science project, so to speak, it's going to run into challenges. So we always try and uh, you know the way I would approach it, the answer is sometimes customers come in new to Monday, but with very let's call them rigid ideas of how it needs to be built, right, in their mind. And I think sometimes the challenge as a consultant team is to guide them to a more true to Monday, more flexible, more traditional approach so that they don't back themselves into a corner. So we try and avoid those, um, daisy chain, convoluted science projects where at all possible. To ensure that the kind of the solution itself is future-proofed for the customer and they can benefit from the Monday roadmap as opposed to, oh, this is how we used to do it, so we have to do it the same way in Monday. It's just going to say Monday as the branding, but it's still the same solution. We try to avoid that. But sometimes we just have to kind of do what the customer wants in the best way we can, right? And it's a bit of a balancing act.
Yeah, for sure. And so you're coming in, I'm guessing a lot of times someone already set something up and they need your help to maybe fix it or reset it or
Right.
what would be like when you're making that audit, when you're looking at their current setup, what is the first things you look at? to make sense of it all and to see what's important.
Yeah, no, it's a really important question because if it's done right, it sets up the whole implementation for success. And if it's done, or if it's done wrongly or not done at all, then kind of the solution could be a little bit myopic. So what we try and do is take a top-down approach, and whether it be on a digital canvas or an equivalent, Monday's Work Canvas is a tool that we typically use. Put in a plug for that. We really try and have the customer take us through their end-to-end business. How do they work? What are their main processes? You know, what are their main KPIs? A little bit of a spotlight on each team, talking about their tools, their processes, their pain points, because it kind of creates kind of the big picture, and it actually sometimes forces them to realize what's going on in pockets of their team that they don't even know because they're not used to doing this type of exercise, especially Monday customers who are not maybe or ones that have experienced large IT implementations where this is more common, that they're not used to like just taking a methodical approach. So we try and do like a series of strategy workshops. We kind of whiteboard it, and what emerges are a very discrete list of workflows that represent their business. And with their input, we kind of prioritize. Okay, we've come up with 7 workflows. What we're hearing is these are the top 3. So are these the ones you want to lean in first with Monday? And if so, we can map out an approach. So that's kind of generally our approach. And then along the way, we're always asking, okay, so who on your team is the Monday champion? Who are we investing in? What's your path to self-sufficiency? Because we don't want Purple Plum to be a drug for you, right? Forever. That's not our goal, right? We want to set you up for that self-sufficiency, that independence. So we're always making sure we have the right 1 or 2 people that we can invest in and help grow. And then we're asking, okay, so what's the change management plan? How are you going to introduce this? How are we going to pilot this in a small group, get buy-in, and then expand from there? So th those are kind of some of the standard tenets of how we engage with customers.
Sounds like therapy.
Yeah, it's not unlike, and it happens to be my wife is a therapist, so there could be some overlap.
Nice. Okay, final question, which actually is the most interesting one for me, is how do you measure success? You see all these processes, you build it. Sometimes I'm sure it takes months, sometimes it takes weeks. Sometimes it's probably, like you said, maybe a more dysfunctional situation, so it takes longer. How do you know that it's working and you're doing well, and how do you measure it?
Yeah, sometimes it's quantitative and sometimes it's qualitative. I think for sure one of the components is can the customer be independent and self-sufficient, as I was just saying at the end of this? Do they feel like we've gotten them to, like I always say, the first level of Donkey Kong, now they can get to the second level on their own, right? Is that, or do they like feel like, oh no, we have to keep coming back and sign more contracts. So that's one piece in terms of the relationship and in terms of their comfort and independence with Monday. I think the other piece is having a clear definition of success for that project up front. So at the end of the project, we want to retire this old system and move to Monday, or we want to reduce our headcount by this. And so success is somewhat quantitative in that sense, based on some pre-discussed goals. And then I think some of it is also just thinking about now is, do we have an advocate for Monday at the end and an advocate for Purple Plum? I think ultimately, coming back to our therapy comments here, sometimes, a sign of a good relationship is they want to go out on the next date. So,
Right.
so do they see Monday as a platform and Purple Plum as a partner, as 2 entities that they want to continue working with and investing in for the betterment of their business? So I think that relationship piece is just as important in terms of defining success.
Amazing. So many insightful moments here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm sure our future listeners, viewers will enjoy it. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and as you can hopefully you can tell that I and we are passionate about Monday. It gets in your bones. it wakes you up at night sometimes as you think about things, right? But it's a unique phenomenon, this Monday ecosystem, as I'm sure customers and prospects that you're talking to will realize. And always happy to chat to people and share our experiences if it can help others.